In the city of Malton, crime is at an all-time high, with murder, robbery, and corruption ruling the streets. With the public demanding results in an anti-crime, a task force was created to combat these vile criminal elements as they continue to plague the city. The squad was responsible for capturing the city's most wanted criminals, and we always got our man. The public called us the Crime Busters. The squad was led by me, Detective Jim Reed, though most people around here call me Noire Reed, and in today's series of the Noire Files, we look at an outcast with a love of books who only wanted love, but in return he was treated like crap. And this brings us to the story telling of his beloved life, along with some of the classics. This is the story of Charles Charlie King, known to the world at large as Storyteller. Case File 7. Storyteller. Real name, Charles Charlie King. MO, kills people and then dresses them up like fairy tale characters. Age, 25. Height, average. Weight, 90 pounds. Hair, white, formerly black. Eyes, blue. Status, alive. Whereabouts, sentenced to 30 years in hard time. Charlie King was born into the King family. They were a family that prided themselves on being great in sports. His father was a notorious football player in Malton City for the Malton City Eagles. Now, other than Charlie, he had two other sons. First off, here's the big man himself, Mr. King. Here are his sons. Cameron, and an adopted one, Eddie. Both were later to move on to become successful careers in the sports industry. Cameron became a baseball player and Eddie became a boxer, but they both played football in school. Now, Charlie is what you might consider, let's say, the black sheep of the family. He hated sports, but he loved to read books. He got A's in all his class, but he always failed PE. Another thing that made him an outcast with his family is that he had average looks and his brothers were very attractive. So as you can see, he didn't have like the greatest home life, constant in the shadows of his brother's success. Charlie did eventually, however, end up going to college. And as you can see on the screen, he ended up becoming a writer during his college years and became a novelist. He would eventually release his first book in the long-running series of the Storyteller franchise. Now, the Storyteller franchise was essentially about a serial killer who, of course, was named Storyteller, and essentially would kill his victims and dress them up like fairy tale characters. Now, the book series is full of suspense, twist, action, and very interesting characters. Now, this as a result, Charlie was going well, and he was riding high, and for a while he was more popular than his brothers and eventually his father. So essentially he had a good life up to this point. He wasn't angry at the world yet, but it eventually would come with a figure to enter his life, as his success would not last long. A burning tragedy. Now, like I said, his success wouldn't last long, as during the time he released his fourth book, and while he was writing his fifth book, he met a woman named Sue, and short for Susan, and the encounter blossomed into romance. For once in his life, Charlie finally had someone to love him. But tragedy would later strike as he ran into, Sue, I should say, later revealed to him that he had an ex-boyfriend named Jonathan who was very abusive and very jealous towards her. One day, according to reports, he came up to the house and threatened to harm him unless Sue came along with her. Saying Jonathan was one of the classic people who sees nothing more than women as property rather than actual people. But Charlie was not going to give up, and what went to a talk turned into an argument. The next thing you knew, a fight broke out. The fight resulted in a fire breaking out and burned the house down. Jonathan managed to escape and wasn't harmed, but Charlie wasn't so lucky. He ended up receiving burns and, well, was quickly sent to hospital. During his time in hospital, however, tragedy, tragedy. Sue died in a car crash, and it was revealed that she was pregnant at the time. Charlie's unborn son. Jonathan got away, and well, even though there was evidence and even rumors that the car was tampered with, none of them could be linked back to Jonathan. And to add insult to injury, Jonathan quickly got remarried to a beautiful and rich woman. Mad and furious with vengeance on his mind, he swore that he would get revenge on Jonathan. He ended up becoming a reclusive and stayed away from the world. Eventually, he realized enough was enough, and so he started to plan to get revenge on the boy Jonathan. There was only one problem. He didn't have enough money. He asked his family for loans, but, well, they refused to help. And most of his money actually went to repairing his house, and of course to cover the cost for Sue's funeral. Realizing the only way to make money was to write another Storyteller book, and as a result, being isolated for so long and suffering writer's block, he later started to believe that he was Storyteller. And in a twisted way, he thought in order to free himself from writer's block was to embody the character. Like I said, he eventually led to believe he was Storyteller. Next thing you knew, the Storyteller murders started popping up. And it first started with the first killing of the investigator for Sue's murder, who always tried to pass it off as an accident. Well, this is what happened. She was killed and was later dressed up as Snow White. He had committed his first murder. Storyteller was born. That's Jonathan, by the way, the man responsible for that. And this was the picture we got of the burning house. Jeez. Now I can see why he became the way he did. Who wouldn't turn mad after suffering that event? And believe it or not, what you're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, is the first picture that we ever got a storyteller from the second crime scene. I gotta say, I really love the costume. Anyway, we later came into the picture when he killed a third victim. We were called in by a rogue detective by the name of Elliot Malone. It was my rival, a crooked cop. Eventually, he would become a notorious criminal mastermind known as Claw. The team that came to the crime scene was me, Axel, Taggart, Billy, Britt, and our lab assistant, our coroner, or doctor, Abe, went to the scene. Now, the third body was found outside a nightclub, the Lux nightclub, which was ran by a philanthropist and a dear friend of mine, Dan Morningstar, the future gangster, the devil. Now, the victim at the crime scene was dressed up like Rapunzel, and Morningstar, Dan, revealed that she was an ex-junkie, and he was trying to help her get off the drugs and essentially rehabilitate her. And he asked to help consult with the case. Naturally, the fact we need all the hands we could get, we agreed. Especially knew the fact we weren't going to get help from Malone, my rival. Abe managed to deduce how the woman was killed. She was stabbed in the neck with a average kitchen knife. Now, we saw all the files of the killings. 3 were killed before we even found them. The first one was basically the investigator from the case of Sue's murder, dressed up as Snow White. The second, believe it or not, was actually the judge that presided the case. He was dressed up like Sleeping Beauty. Then there was the junkie, who essentially was just there and refused to help Sue out of the car. Now, Dan said there was something familiar about the victims, and Brett then deduced that the killings were the exact same style in the Storyteller books. We then read up the author, found out about his background, the victims, how they relate to him. We then found his address. Me, Dan, and Britt essentially went to the house to apprehend him. But when we got there, we found out that we were in for quite a surprise, as eventually traps were set off.
Salvation that have brutalized this room with your love sacrifice that I...
eventually managed to get out of the trap, and then we went to the computer area where he's been working out from. We later found all the evidence proving he was responsible for the murders, and that it was all done to help him sell his new book. We realized where he was. He was going to a convention center to release his new book. We quickly got there, and before we could apprehend him, a gunfight ensued.
Stop that car!
He tried to escape that car. We blasted through his car. He quickly got out. We shot in the shoulder and fell to the ground. We arrested him immediately on sight. After his arrest, well, he was sentenced to hard time, but his book was quickly, released and became a bestseller with rumors that there was a movie deal. When Jonathan heard about the whole case and what the whole purpose was, and the fact that he had been receiving threatening notes, which we believe came from Storyteller, though couldn't prove it, and that he would be coming after him to kill him, he quickly left the city. Where he went, I do not know. But for now, another criminal is locked up, and I, Noire Reed, call this case closed. Join us next time as we tackle another criminal in the Noire Files.